Nobody believed a 5'4" navigation officer could command a 9,000-ton destroyer through the most dangerous waters on Earth, while outmaneuvering an enemy fleet that had never lost a naval engagement. They called her Little Storm and questioned whether she belonged on a warship at all, until the night she sailed the USS Defiance through a Category 5 typhoon and emerged from the eye of the storm with her guns blazing, turning the tide of the entire Pacific campaign. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The Pacific Ocean stretched endlessly in all directions, its steel-gray surface broken only by the white foam trails of the USS Defiance as she cut through swells that would dwarf most buildings. The Arleigh Burke-class destroyer moved with the deadly grace of a predator, her hull knife-sharp against waves that crashed over her bow in explosions of salt spray and ocean fury. At 505 feet of American naval engineering, she was a floating fortress bristling with missile tubes, radar arrays, and enough firepower to level a small city. Deep within the ship's Combat Information Center, Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell hunched over a navigation console that seemed designed for someone twice her size. At barely 5 feet 4 inches and weighing less than 120 pounds, she looked almost childlike among the towering electronics and massive displays that surrounded her workstation. Her uniform, even in the smallest available size, hung loose on her petite frame, and she had to adjust her headset constantly to keep it from sliding down over her eyes. The CIC hummed with the constant electronic whisper of a modern warship, banks of blue-white monitors casting everything in sharp relief while dozens of displays tracked friendly and hostile contacts across thousands of square miles of ocean. The air was thick with the metallic tang of electronics and the subtle vibration of massive diesel engines that never stopped churning. Radio chatter filled the space with updates from patrol aircraft, satellite feeds, and intelligence reports. That painted a picture of escalating tensions across the Western Pacific. Sarah's workstation was a marvel of organized precision, every cable routed exactly where it needed to be, every piece of equipment positioned for optimal efficiency. Multiple keyboards responded to her touch like extensions of her nervous system. As she monitored weather patterns, ocean currents, and navigation data across 6 different display systems simultaneously, her analysis went far beyond standard navigation protocols, incorporating oceanographic data, atmospheric pressure readings, and historical weather patterns that most officers would consider irrelevant to ship operations. The Morning Watch Report already contained 17 separate weather analyses, each one tagged with precise coordinates, timing predictions, and tactical implications. While other navigation officers might update their charts twice per shift, Sarah maintained real-time environmental awareness that bordered on supernatural intuition. She tracked storm systems 3 days before they appeared on official weather services, predicted current shifts that could affect fuel consumption, and identified atmospheric conditions that might interfere with radar or communication systems. Her logbooks were filled with handwriting so precise it looked machine-printed, each entry documenting not just required navigation data, but detailed observations about ocean conditions, weather patterns, and environmental factors that regulations never demanded. She recorded water temperature variations, wind shear patterns, and barometric pressure changes with the methodical attention of someone who understood that, in naval warfare, environmental awareness could mean the difference between victory and disaster. The bridge door opened with a metallic clang, letting in the sound of wind and waves from the weather decks above. 3 officers entered, their conversation already in progress, voices carrying easily in the electronic-filled space. Commander Robert Davidson led the group, a broad-shouldered man whose confident stride and pressed uniform suggested someone who had never questioned his place in the naval hierarchy. Mitchell's still down here running her personal weather service, Davidson said to the others, not bothering to lower his voice. I swear she spends more time analyzing ocean currents than actually navigating the ship. Someone should tell her we have GPS for a reason. Lieutenant Marcus Chun glanced toward Sarah's workstation and shook his head with visible disbelief. She looks like she should be working at a marina yacht club, not plotting courses for a destroyer. You sure the Academy didn't lower their standards just to meet diversity quotas? The third officer, Lieutenant Commander Brooks, whose laugh carried an edge of condescension, replied, "Technically she's qualified, but I heard she needed special accommodation just to reach some of the bridge controls. They probably had to install step stools throughout the ship." Sarah's fingers never paused in their movement across the navigation systems. She had learned long ago that responding to comments like these only encouraged more of them. Instead, she adjusted the gain on her weather radar and isolated an atmospheric disturbance that had been developing 200 miles to the northwest. The pressure readings indicated a rapidly intensifying storm system that could affect their planned patrol route within 18 hours. "I bet she gets seasick in anything over 2-foot swells," Davidson continued, settling into a chair near the communications station. "What's she going to do if we actually engage enemy forces? Hide behind the radar scope and hope they don't notice her?" Chun laughed. "Maybe she can navigate us away from any actual fighting. Keep us safe in calm waters where she won't have to worry about real naval operations." The conversation they were mocking contained references to a developing weather pattern that could provide tactical advantages if properly exploited. Sarah isolated the atmospheric data and began cross-referencing it with historical storm tracks and seasonal current patterns. Her analysis revealed that the storm system was following an unusual path that could create operational opportunities for a ship commander with sufficient environmental awareness to exploit changing conditions. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "Seriously though," Brooks said, "what was Command thinking when they assigned her here? This is a frontline destroyer, not a research vessel. We need officers who can handle themselves when things get violent, not someone who looks like she'd blow away in a stiff breeze." Sarah saved her weather analysis to an encrypted file and began preparing a tactical assessment that incorporated environmental factors into operational planning. Her understanding of ocean dynamics went far beyond standard navigation training, encompassing oceanography, meteorology, and tactical applications that most naval officers never studied. She could predict how weather conditions would affect radar performance, how ocean currents would influence torpedo trajectories, and how atmospheric pressure changes might create opportunities for surprise attacks. She probably joined the Navy because she couldn't get hired anywhere else, Davidson said with casual cruelty. "Who's going to take someone that small seriously in the civilian world? At least here they have to pretend she's useful." The background data from her weather analysis included acoustic signatures that suggested the developing storm would create natural masking for ship movements, potentially allowing undetected approaches through areas that would normally be under constant surveillance. Sarah pulled up tactical charts and began modeling how environmental conditions could be used to tactical advantage by commanders with sufficient understanding of oceanographic principles. "I give her about 10 seconds in actual combat," Chun said. "First shot fired and she'd probably faint. Or maybe hide in the head until the shooting stops." Sarah highlighted specific atmospheric pressure readings that indicated the storm system was intensifying more rapidly than standard weather models predicted. Her analysis suggested that within 36 hours, the Western Pacific would experience one of the most severe typhoons in recorded history, creating operational conditions that could fundamentally alter naval tactics throughout the region. Her coffee had gone cold hours ago, but she didn't stop working to heat it up. The weather data was still developing, and new atmospheric readings were providing additional confirmation that a massive storm system was building toward unprecedented intensity. Each new data point refined her analysis and improved the accuracy of her predictions about how the typhoon would affect naval operations across thousands of square miles of ocean. The officers' conversation shifted to other topics, but their dismissive laughter continued to punctuate the background noise of the CIC. Sarah blocked it out completely, focusing instead on the subtle changes in barometric pressure and wind. Patterns that indicated the approaching weather system would be far more dangerous than anyone realized. Her workstation included meteorological equipment that most naval officers never used, but Sarah captured every piece of atmospheric data that might provide tactical intelligence. She had developed her own system for cataloging and analyzing weather patterns, creating a database that was more comprehensive than anything available through official meteorological services. Her weather tracking system incorporated satellite data, atmospheric readings, ocean temperature measurements, and historical storm patterns to create predictive models that consistently outperformed standard forecasting methods. The air conditioning system cycled on with a subtle change in frequency that most people wouldn't notice, but Sarah registered it automatically, along with dozens of other environmental indicators that provided constant awareness of her surroundings. She had learned to monitor every aspect of the ship's environment, partly out of professional necessity and partly because situational awareness had kept her alive during previous deployments to hostile waters. As the morning progressed toward midday, the weather data continued providing pieces of an increasingly alarming picture. Sarah assembled them methodically, building a comprehensive analysis of atmospheric conditions that suggested the Pacific Fleet was about to face one of the most dangerous storms in naval history. The typhoon was developing with unprecedented speed and intensity, following a track that would put multiple naval task forces directly in its path. Her fingers moved across the oceanographic analysis system as she tracked current patterns that had shifted dramatically over the past 18 hours. The data showed ocean temperature variations and pressure changes that indicated massive atmospheric disturbances building across a front that stretched for over 1,000 miles. Standard weather forecasting models were underestimating both the intensity and the speed of the developing storm system. The typhoon she was tracking would be classified as a Category 5 hurricane by civilian standards, but Sarah's analysis indicated it would exceed even those extreme measurements. The storm was developing characteristics that she had never seen in meteorological records, with wind speeds that could reach over 200 miles per hour and waves that would tower more than 100 feet above sea level. Chief Petty Officer Mike Thompson entered the CIC for the routine equipment inspection, his weathered face reflecting decades of naval service and old-school attitudes about who belonged on warships. He glanced at Sarah's workstation with the puff expression of someone examining something that didn't quite make sense. "Mitchell, you've got more weather data running than the National Hurricane Center," he said with a tone that mixed curiosity with skepticism. "What exactly are you tracking out there that's got you so focused on atmospheric conditions?" Sarah looked up from her displays for the first time in hours, her eyes reflecting the blue-white glow of multiple monitor screens. "Chief, we have a massive typhoon developing approximately 400 miles northwest of our current position. The storm system is intensifying at a rate that exceeds all historical precedents, and its projected track will put it directly across our operational area within 48 hours. Thompson moved closer to examine her weather displays, trying to make sense of the complex atmospheric data that filled multiple monitors with swirling patterns and numerical analysis. "This looks like the same kind of weather tracking you were doing last week. Are you sure you're not seeing patterns that aren't really there?" Sarah highlighted sections of her atmospheric analysis that showed pressure drops and wind speed increases that indicated unprecedented storm development. "Chief, these readings are consistent across multiple satellite feeds and atmospheric monitoring stations. The typhoon is real, and it's going to be the most dangerous storm system the Pacific Fleet has encountered in decades. Thompson nodded thoughtfully, recognizing the competence in Sarah's presentation, even if he couldn't fully understand the technical details. You better make sure Captain Hawkins sees this analysis. If you're right about storm conditions, it could affect our entire patrol schedule. After Thompson left, Sarah returned to her meteorological analysis with renewed focus. The developing typhoon represented more than just dangerous weather. It was a tactical factor that could fundamentally change naval operations throughout the Western Pacific. Her understanding of storm dynamics and ocean conditions could provide critical advantages for any commander wise enough to utilize environmental intelligence effectively. The CIC continued humming with routine communications and equipment monitoring, but Sarah's attention remained fixed on atmospheric data that painted an increasingly dramatic picture. The typhoon was not just intensifying rapidly, it was developing characteristics that could create unprecedented opportunities for naval tactics that incorporated environmental factors into operational planning. Her analysis revealed that the storm's eye would create a zone of relative calm surrounded by walls of wind and rain that would make radar detection nearly impossible. A ship that could navigate through the typhoon's outer bands and emerge from the eye wall would achieve complete tactical surprise against any enemy forces that assumed no vessel could survive passage through such extreme weather conditions. Sarah opened her most detailed weather analysis file and began documenting predictions that would prove crucial for any naval engagement that occurred during the typhoon. She included wind speed calculations, wave height projections, visibility assessments, and radar performance predictions that could determine the outcome of battles fought in the storm's influence. Her preparation extended beyond meteorological analysis into tactical applications of weather intelligence. Sarah had spent months studying how environmental conditions affected naval warfare, learning to predict how storms could mask ship movements, how atmospheric pressure changes influenced weapon performance, and how ocean conditions could be exploited to gain tactical advantages over enemy forces. The weather station included equipment that she had modified to enhance storm tracking capabilities, improvements that weren't officially authorized, but allowed her to detect and analyze atmospheric conditions that would be impossible to monitor using standard meteorological gear. Her modifications enabled real-time tracking of storm development with accuracy that consistently exceeded official weather forecasting services. As the afternoon watch approached, Sarah prepared comprehensive weather briefings that incorporated tactical recommendations based on her environmental analysis. Her reports were detailed enough to support immediate operational decisions, but she knew from experience that her complex atmospheric assessments often overwhelmed officers who preferred simple weather updates over comprehensive environmental intelligence. The typhoon continued intensifying as evening approached, developing the characteristics of a storm system that would challenge every conventional assumption about naval operations in extreme weather. Sarah's analysis indicated that the typhoon would create conditions that could either destroy ships that encountered it unprepared or provide unprecedented tactical opportunities for commanders with sufficient environmental expertise to exploit the storm's unique characteristics. Her workstation displayed real-time updates from multiple weather monitoring systems, each one confirming that the Pacific Fleet was about to face meteorological conditions that would test every aspect of naval seamanship and tactical doctrine. The typhoon represented both an existential threat and a potential strategic advantage, depending entirely on which commanders possessed the environmental intelligence necessary to turn extreme weather into tactical opportunity. The wardroom fell silent as Captain James Hawkins reviewed the overnight intelligence reports, his weathered hands gripping coffee that had long since gone cold. Around the polished table, the USS Defiance's senior officers waited for the morning briefing to begin, each one carrying the weight of missions that grew more dangerous with every passing day. The ship's gentle roll through 8-foot swells was barely noticeable to men who had spent decades at sea. But the tension in the compartment was thick enough to cut with a knife. "Gentlemen, the tactical situation has deteriorated significantly," Hawkins began, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had commanded destroyers through 3 different conflicts. "Pacific Fleet Intelligence reports that Admiral Victor Kozlov has assembled the largest enemy naval force seen in these waters since World War II. 12 surface combatants, including 3 guided missile cruisers and his flagship, the battle cruiser." Volkov, Commander Davidson leaned forward, studying the tactical display that showed red symbols scattered across hundreds of miles of ocean. "Sir, our task force only has 4 destroyers and 1 cruiser. Those odds don't exactly favor conventional engagement," Hawkins nodded grimly. "Which is why we're not going to fight conventionally. Intelligence indicates that Kozlov is planning to break through the Mariana Strait and establish naval supremacy across the entire Western Pacific shipping corridor. If he succeeds, we lose our primary supply lines to our Pacific allies." "Lieutenant." Shun raised his hand slightly. "Captain, what's our mission profile? Are we conducting reconnaissance or direct engagement?" The captain's expression grew more serious as he activated additional displays showing shipping routes, naval bases, and strategic choke points throughout the region. "We're tasked with disrupting Kozlov's fleet movements and preventing his breakthrough into the main shipping lanes. The problem is that conventional tactics won't work against his superior numbers and firepower." Lieutenant Commander Brooks studied the intelligence summaries with visible concern. "Sir, Kozlov has never lost a naval engagement. His tactical reputation is legendary throughout their entire fleet. He's fought 17 major actions and achieved decisive victory in every one." Hawkins stood and moved to the large tactical chart that dominated one wall of the wardroom. "Viktor Kozlov is known as the Shark for good reason. He attacks with overwhelming force, uses superior numbers to crush opposition, and never gives his opponents time to develop countermeasures. His standard doctrine is to engage at maximum range with coordinated missile strikes that destroy enemy ships before they can respond effectively." The briefing continued with detailed analysis of enemy capabilities, weapon systems, and tactical doctrines that painted an increasingly grim picture of their mission prospects. Kozlov's fleet included advanced radar systems, long-range missiles, and electronic warfare capabilities that could neutralize most conventional approaches to naval combat. "Our advantage," Hawkins continued, "lies in superior training, better damage control procedures, and more advanced combat systems. But against these odds, those advantages won't be enough to achieve victory through standard engagement protocols." Commander Davidson reviewed the enemy force composition with growing unease. "Captain, if we engage Kozlov's main force directly, we'll be outnumbered 3-1. Even with perfect tactical execution, the mathematics of naval combat don't support survival, let alone victory." The captain returned to his seat and opened additional intelligence files that contained classified assessments of enemy intentions and capabilities. "Fleet Command understands the tactical realities. That's why we're authorized to use unconventional methods, including weather routing and environmental tactics that might give us strategic advantages." Lieutenant Chun looked puzzled by the reference to environmental tactics. "Sir, are we talking about using weather conditions to mask our approach? Most storm systems in this region are tracked by satellite surveillance that both sides can access." Hawkins smiled slightly, the first time his expression had softened during the entire briefing. "That's where our navigation officer's specialized expertise becomes crucial. Lieutenant Mitchell has been tracking atmospheric developments that might provide tactical opportunities conventional wisdom would consider impossible." The mention of Sarah's name drew surprised glances from several officers around the table. Most of them had dismissed her detailed weather analysis as excessive perfectionism rather than tactically relevant intelligence. The idea that her meteorological expertise might be crucial for their mission challenged their assumptions about what constituted useful naval capabilities. "Captain, are you suggesting that weather analysis could provide tactical advantages against Kozlov's superior numbers?" Davidson asked, his tone mixing skepticism with genuine curiosity about unconventional approaches to their impossible mission. The captain activated his personal tablet and displayed weather satellite imagery that showed massive atmospheric disturbances developing across their operational area. "Gentlemen, Lieutenant Mitchell has identified a typhoon system that's developing characteristics unlike anything in recorded meteorological history. Her analysis suggests that this storm could create operational opportunities that conventional naval tactics couldn't exploit." Lieutenant Commander Brooks studied the satellite images with growing interest. "Sir, that looks like a Category 5 hurricane. No rational naval commander would operate in those conditions. The wave heights alone would make effective combat." "Impossible." Hawkins nodded approvingly. "Exactly, which is why Kozlov won't expect anyone to use the storm tactically. His entire operational plan assumes that severe weather will force all naval forces to seek shelter and wait for conditions to improve." The tactical implications began emerging as the officers processed the possibility of using extreme weather as a strategic advantage rather than an obstacle to be avoided. Traditional naval doctrine emphasized avoiding severe storms, but their current situation required approaches that transcended conventional thinking. "Captain, are we actually considering sailing into a Category 5 typhoon?" Chun asked, his voice reflecting the disbelief that everyone around the table was feeling. The survival rates for ships caught in storms of that magnitude are not encouraging. Hawkins stood again and moved to the meteorological displays that showed the typhoon's projected path and intensity. "Lieutenant Mitchell's analysis indicates that the storm's eye will create a zone of relative calm surrounded by weather conditions that would make radar detection virtually impossible. A ship that could navigate through the typhoon's outer bands and emerge from the eye wall would achieve complete tactical surprise." Commander Davidson reviewed the storm tracking data with professional interest that overcame his initial skepticism. "Sir, even if we could survive passage through the typhoon, how do we know where Kozlov's forces will be when we emerge? Storm conditions would affect their positioning just as much as ours." The captain smiled again, this time with genuine satisfaction. "That's where Lieutenant Mitchell's environmental intelligence becomes invaluable. Her analysis predicts how the storm will affect different areas of our operational zone, allowing us to position ourselves where Kozlov's forces will be forced to concentrate when they seek shelter from the typhoon." The concept was so audacious that it took several minutes for the full implications to sink in. Instead of avoiding the most dangerous weather in decades, they would sail directly into it, using the typhoon as both concealment and tactical positioning aid. The approach required environmental expertise that went far beyond standard naval training. "Gentlemen, this mission will test every aspect of our seamanship, tactical doctrine, and technological capabilities," Hawkins continued, "but it also provides our only realistic chance of achieving tactical surprise against an enemy force that vastly outnumbers us." Lieutenant Chun raised another concern that everyone was thinking. "Captain, our crew has trained for combat operations and standard storm procedures, but navigating through a Category 5 typhoon while maintaining combat readiness is beyond normal operational parameters." The captain acknowledged the validity of the concern while maintaining confidence in their capabilities. "Our crew is among the finest in the Pacific Fleet, and our ship is specifically designed to handle extreme weather conditions. But you're right that this mission will require performance levels that exceed standard operational expectations." Commander Davidson studied the timeline information that showed when the typhoon would reach maximum intensity relative to their projected encounter with enemy forces. "Sir, the timing requirements are incredibly precise. If we're even slightly off schedule, we could miss the tactical window entirely." Hawkins nodded seriously. which is why Lieutenant Mitchell's weather predictions need to be absolutely accurate. Her environmental intelligence will determine whether this mission achieves tactical surprise or results in our destruction in the middle of the worst storm in Pacific Fleet history. The briefing continued with detailed discussion of technical preparations, crew training requirements, and contingency plans for various scenarios that might develop during their unprecedented mission. Every aspect of ship operations would need modification to account for combat activities conducted in extreme weather conditions. Captain, assuming we survive passage through the typhoon and achieve tactical surprise, what are our engagement protocols against Kozlov's main force? Brooks asked, focusing on the combat aspects of their mission. The captain activated tactical displays that showed weapon engagement envelopes and targeting solutions under various weather conditions. Our primary advantage will be the element of surprise combined with Kozlov's assumption that no friendly forces could be operating in typhoon conditions. We'll engage his flagship first, attempting to eliminate command and control capabilities before his escorts can respond effectively. Lieutenant Chen studied the weapons data with professional interest. Sir, our missile systems will have reduced effectiveness in extreme weather conditions. High winds and atmospheric interference could significantly degrade targeting accuracy. Hawkins acknowledged the challenge while maintaining focus on their tactical advantages. True, but Kozlov's defensive systems will be equally affected by weather conditions. More importantly, his forces won't be expecting attack from any direction, since conventional wisdom suggests no ships could be operating in typhoon conditions. The discussion shifted to specific technical modifications required for combat operations in extreme weather. Gun systems would need special preparation, missile guidance systems required recalibration, and radar arrays needed additional protection against wind and water damage that could affect their performance. Gentlemen, this mission represents a fundamental departure from conventional naval tactics, the captain concluded. Success will depend on our ability to use environmental conditions that our enemies consider prohibitive as tactical advantages that enable victory against superior numbers. Commander Davidson reviewed the overall mission timeline with growing appreciation for its complexity. Captain, the coordination requirements are extraordinary. Weather timing, tactical positioning, weapon system preparation, and crew readiness all need perfect synchronization. The captain gathered his briefing materials while maintaining eye contact with each officer around the table, which is why I'm assigning Lieutenant Mitchell as our primary tactical advisor for environmental operations. Her weather analysis capabilities will be crucial for every aspect of mission execution. The announcement drew surprised reactions from officers who had previously dismissed Sarah's detailed meteorological work as excessive perfectionism. The revelation that her specialized expertise would be central to their mission success challenged their assumptions about what constituted tactically relevant knowledge. Sir, will Lieutenant Mitchell be stationed on the bridge during combat operations? Lieutenant Commander Brooks asked, recognizing the implications of having their navigation officer in a primary tactical advisory role. Hawkins nodded decisively. Lieutenant Mitchell will be our primary source for real-time environmental intelligence throughout the mission. Her understanding of storm dynamics and oceanographic conditions could determine whether we achieve tactical surprise or sail into disaster. The briefing concluded with assignment of specific preparation tasks and timeline requirements that would transform the USS Defiance from a standard destroyer into a vessel capable of fighting effectively in the most extreme weather conditions imaginable. Every department would need to modify their procedures and equipment to account for unprecedented operational requirements. As the officers filed out of the wardroom, their conversations reflected a mixture of excitement and apprehension about their extraordinary mission. The concept of using a Category 5 typhoon as tactical concealment was so audacious that it challenged every conventional assumption about naval warfare. Lieutenant Chen lingered after the others had left, studying the meteorological data that Lieutenant Mitchell had compiled. "Captain, assuming her weather predictions are accurate, do you really believe we can survive passage through a typhoon of this magnitude?" Captain Hawkins reviewed the storm intensity projections one more time. Before responding, "Lieutenant Mitchell's environmental analysis is the most comprehensive weather intelligence I've encountered in 25 years of naval service. If anyone can guide us through this storm and position us for tactical success, it's her." The captain's confidence in Sarah's capabilities represented a dramatic shift from the dismissive attitudes that had characterized most of her colleagues' opinions about her specialized expertise. The mission's success would depend entirely on abilities that had been consistently undervalued and misunderstood. Throughout the ship, word of their extraordinary mission began spreading among crew members who would be responsible for executing operations that exceeded every standard parameter for naval combat. The USS Defiance was about to attempt something that had never been tried in naval history, sailing directly into the most dangerous storm on Earth to achieve tactical surprise against an enemy that had never been defeated. In the Combat Information Center, Sarah continued her meteorological analysis, unaware that her weather tracking expertise had just become the foundation for one of the most audacious naval operations ever conceived. Her detailed atmospheric intelligence would soon determine whether their mission achieved legendary success or resulted in their disappearance beneath waves that towered higher than skyscrapers. The summons to the captain's cabin came at 13:47 hours, delivered by Petty Officer Rodriguez, with an expression that mixed curiosity with something approaching respect. Sarah had been expecting the call since the morning briefing ended, but walking through the ship's narrow passageways toward the commanding officer's quarters still felt surreal. Crew members who usually ignored her presence now watched with obvious interest as she passed, clearly aware that something significant was developing around their quiet navigation officer. Captain Hawkins' cabin reflected the Spartan efficiency of a career naval officer, its bulkheads lined with charts, technical manuals, and photographs from previous commands. The only personal touches were a small collection of nautical instruments and a framed photograph of his family that reminded everyone who saw it that even ship commanders had lives beyond the steel confines of naval warfare. "Lieutenant Mitchell, please have a seat," the captain said, gesturing toward a chair positioned across from his desk. His manner was formal but carried none of the dismissive undertones that characterized most of her interactions with senior officers. "I've been reviewing your meteorological analysis of the developing typhoon, and I need to understand the full scope of your environmental intelligence capabilities." Sarah settled into the chair while maintaining the professional composure that had served her throughout her naval career. "Sir, my weather tracking system incorporates satellite data, atmospheric pressure readings, ocean temperature measurements, and historical storm pattern analysis to create predictive models that consistently outperform standard forecasting methods." The captain opened a folder containing printed copies of her weather reports, each page covered with detailed atmospheric analysis and tactical recommendations that went far beyond routine navigation requirements. "Lieutenant, these reports demonstrate understanding of oceanographic principles that exceed standard Naval Academy curriculum. Where did you acquire this level of expertise?" Sarah had anticipated this question and prepared an answer that emphasized her technical background without seeming to challenge traditional naval training protocols. "Sir, I completed advanced coursework in atmospheric sciences and oceanography during my time at the Academy, supplemented by independent study of meteorological applications to naval operations. I've also maintained correspondence with civilian research institutions that specialize in severe weather analysis." Captain Hawkins studied her personnel file while processing the implications of having such specialized expertise among his junior officers. "According to your records, you graduated third in your class at the Naval Academy. with highest honors in mathematics and atmospheric sciences. Yet you've been assigned to routine navigation duties that utilize only a fraction of your analytical capabilities. The observation touched on frustrations that Sarah had learned to suppress during her naval career, but she responded with diplomatic professionalism rather than personal complaint. "Sir, I've found that detailed environmental analysis enhances navigation effectiveness and provides tactical intelligence that can benefit overall mission success." The captain closed her personnel file and leaned back in his chair, studying her with the analytical attention that successful naval commanders develop through years of evaluating personnel under pressure. "Lieutenant, I'm about to discuss classified mission details that require absolute discretion. Are you prepared to accept additional responsibilities that go far beyond standard navigation duties?" Sarah straightened in her chair, recognizing that this moment would fundamentally alter her role aboard the USS Defiance. "Yes, sir. I'm prepared to accept whatever responsibilities the mission requires." Hawkins activated his secure terminal and displayed tactical charts that showed enemy force positions, friendly unit locations, and environmental data across thousands of square miles of contested ocean. "We've been tasked with disrupting Admiral Kozlov's fleet movements through unconventional tactics that exploit environmental conditions. Your weather analysis indicates that the developing typhoon could provide tactical opportunities that conventional naval doctrine would consider impossible." Sarah studied the tactical display while processing the extraordinary implications of using severe weather as a strategic advantage rather than an obstacle to be avoided. "Sir, the typhoon is developing characteristics that would create a zone of relative calm within the eye wall, surrounded by weather conditions that would make radar detection virtually impossible." The captain nodded approvingly at her immediate grasp of the tactical possibilities. "Exactly, but navigating through Category 5 conditions while maintaining combat readiness requires environmental intelligence that goes far beyond standard meteorological forecasting. I need to know whether your analysis capabilities can provide the precision necessary for mission success." Sarah opened her tablet and displayed comprehensive atmospheric modeling that incorporated multiple data streams into three-dimensional representations of the storm's structure and development. "Sir, my analysis indicates that the typhoon's eye wall will be approximately 40 miles in diameter at maximum intensity, with wind speeds exceeding 200 miles per hour in the surrounding bands. However, the pressure differential will create navigable corridors through specific sections of the storm." Captain Hawkins leaned forward to examine her storm analysis more closely, recognizing technical sophistication that exceeded anything available through standard naval meteorological services. "Lieutenant, can you predict the exact timing and positioning required to transit through these corridors safely?" Sarah highlighted specific sections of her atmospheric modeling that showed wind patterns, pressure zones, and navigational waypoints through the typhoon's most dangerous areas. "Sir, I can provide real-time navigation guidance through the storm system with accuracy sufficient for tactical positioning. The key is understanding that typhoons aren't uniform structures. They contain internal variations that can be exploited by commanders with sufficient environmental intelligence." The captain's expression reflected growing confidence in capabilities that he was only beginning to understand. "How accurate are your predictions about where enemy forces will position themselves when the storm reaches maximum intensity?" Sarah activated additional displays that showed oceanographic analysis combined with tactical assessment of enemy operational patterns. "Sir, Admiral Kozlov's standard doctrine emphasizes maintaining formation integrity and maximizing mutual support between his ships. The typhoon will force his fleet to concentrate in the only sheltered waters within 300 miles, which are located in the lee of the Mariana Ridge." The tactical implications were becoming clearer as Captain Hawkins processed how environmental Intelligence could provide strategic advantages that conventional naval tactics couldn't achieve. Lieutenant, you're suggesting that we can predict enemy positioning based on oceanographic conditions and weather patterns. Sarah nodded while highlighting specific areas of her analysis that showed how environmental factors would constrain enemy movement options. Sir, severe weather limits tactical flexibility and forces commanders to prioritize survival over optimal positioning. Admiral Kozlov will have no choice but to seek shelter in areas that my analysis can identify with high confidence. The captain stood and moved to examine the large tactical chart that dominated one wall of his cabin, studying the relationship between storm tracks, ocean depths, and tactical positioning requirements. Lieutenant, assuming your environmental predictions are accurate, what are the navigation requirements for approaching enemy forces through the typhoon? Sarah joined him at the chart and began tracing potential approach routes through areas where atmospheric conditions would provide concealment while maintaining navigational safety. Sir, the optimal approach requires precise timing to exploit pressure variations within the storm system. We would need to enter the typhoon's outer bands at specific coordinates and maintain exact headings through areas where wind patterns create temporary corridors. Captain Hawkins traced her proposed route with growing appreciation for its complexity and audacity. This approach would put us within striking distance of Kozlov's flagship while his forces are focused on surviving the storm rather than maintaining defensive postures. Sarah highlighted additional aspects of her analysis that showed how weather conditions would affect weapon systems, radar performance, and communications capabilities on both sides of the engagement. Sir, the storm will degrade enemy defensive capabilities while providing us with tactical advantages that compensate for their superior numbers. The captain returned to his desk and activated secure communication systems that would allow him to coordinate with Fleet Command about their unconventional mission parameters. Lieutenant, I'm authorizing you to prepare comprehensive navigation plans for storm transit and tactical positioning. Your environmental intelligence will be classified at the highest levels and distributed only to personnel with immediate operational need to know. Sarah acknowledged the authorization while recognizing that her role aboard the USS Defiance was about to change dramatically. Sir, I'll prepare detailed navigation protocols and real-time guidance systems for storm transit operations. Captain Hawkins opened additional classified files that contained intelligence about enemy capabilities and tactical doctrines that would affect their mission planning. Lieutenant, Admiral Kozlov has never faced opponents who used environmental conditions as tactical advantages. His entire operational philosophy assumes that severe weather neutralizes naval operations equally for all forces. Sarah studied the enemy intelligence summaries while processing how environmental expertise could exploit assumptions built into conventional naval doctrine. Sir, Admiral Kozlov's tactical reputation is based on engagements fought under normal weather conditions where superior numbers and firepower determined outcomes. Extreme weather conditions would force him to adapt to tactical situations outside his experience. The captain's satisfaction was evident as he recognized how unconventional approaches could neutralize enemy advantages that made conventional engagement impossible. Lieutenant, your environmental analysis provides our only realistic chance of achieving tactical surprise against an enemy force that vastly outnumbers us. Sarah began organizing her weather data into mission-specific briefing materials that would provide the technical foundation for their extraordinary operation. Sir, I'll prepare comprehensive atmospheric intelligence briefings for all departments that will be involved in storm transit and combat operations. Captain Hawkins activated his intercom system and requested that Commander Davidson report to his cabin immediately for additional mission planning discussions. Lieutenant, I want you to brief my executive officer on the environmental aspects of our mission. His understanding of your capabilities will be crucial for effective command coordination. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Commander Davidson, whose expression reflected curiosity about why their navigation officer was meeting privately with the captain. His demeanor suggested someone prepared to discuss routine operational matters rather than revolutionary tactical concepts. Commander, Lieutenant Mitchell has been analyzing environmental conditions that could provide tactical advantages for our mission against Admiral Kozlov's fleet. Captain Hawkins began. I want you to understand the scope of her capabilities and how they integrate with our operational planning. Commander Davidson glanced between the captain and Sarah, with obvious puzzlement about why their meteorological analysis would require senior officer attention. Sir, are we discussing weather routing for tactical positioning? Sarah activated her storm analysis displays and began explaining atmospheric conditions that would affect naval operations throughout their mission area. Commander, the developing typhoon will create environmental conditions that fundamentally alter tactical considerations for naval engagements in this region. Commander Davidson studied her weather displays with growing interest as the implications of her analysis became apparent. Lieutenant, you're suggesting that storm conditions could affect enemy capabilities more significantly than our own? Sarah highlighted specific aspects of her environmental analysis that showed how different ship types and tactical doctrines would be affected by extreme weather conditions. Commander, Admiral Kozlov's fleet includes larger vessels that will be more vulnerable to extreme weather, while their formation tactics become impossible to maintain in typhoon conditions. The executive officer's understanding of tactical possibilities expanded as he processed how environmental intelligence could provide strategic advantages that conventional weapon systems couldn't achieve. Lieutenant, can you predict how storm conditions will affect specific enemy capabilities like radar performance and missile guidance systems? Sarah opened additional analysis files that contained detailed assessments of how atmospheric conditions would degrade various technological systems used by both friendly and enemy forces. Commander, extreme weather affects different technologies in predictable ways that can be incorporated into tactical planning. Captain Hawkins observed the interaction between his executive officer and navigation officer with satisfaction, recognizing that effective mission execution would require understanding and cooperation between all senior personnel. Commander, Lieutenant Mitchell's environmental expertise will be central to every aspect of our mission planning and execution. Commander Davidson's attitude toward Sarah underwent a visible transformation as he recognized capabilities that he had never suspected existed among his junior officers. Lieutenant, how long have you been developing this level of environmental analysis capability? Sarah's response emphasized professional development rather than personal achievement, maintaining the diplomatic approach that had served her throughout her naval career. Commander, I've been studying atmospheric and oceanographic applications to naval operations since my academy years, with continuing education through civilian research institutions. The briefing continued with detailed discussion of technical requirements, coordination protocols, and operational procedures that would be necessary for mission success. Every aspect of their approach required integration between environmental intelligence and conventional naval tactics in ways that had never been attempted. Commander Davidson's final question reflected recognition of the extraordinary nature of their mission. Lieutenant, in your professional assessment, what are our realistic chances of successfully navigating through a Category 5 typhoon while maintaining combat readiness? Sarah's response carried the quiet confidence of someone whose technical expertise had been thoroughly tested through months of detailed analysis. Commander, the mission is technically feasible with proper preparation and precise execution of environmental navigation protocols. Success will depend on coordination between atmospheric intelligence and tactical operations. Captain Hawkins concluded the briefing with authorization for Sarah to begin immediate preparation of detailed mission protocols that would guide their unprecedented operation. Lieutenant, you have 48 hours to prepare comprehensive navigation and tactical guidance systems for storm transit operations. As Sarah left the captain's cabin to begin her mission preparations, she carried with her the weight of responsibilities that would determine whether their audacious plan achieved legendary success or resulted in their destruction in the most dangerous storm system ever recorded in the Pacific Ocean. The transformation in how crew members regarded Sarah became apparent within hours of the captain's mission briefing. Sailors who had previously walked past her workstation without acknowledgement now paused to observe her detailed weather analysis with obvious curiosity. Petty officers who had never spoken to her beyond routine operational communications began asking technical questions about atmospheric conditions and storm tracking, methodologies that demonstrated growing recognition of her expertise. Chief Petty Officer Thompson approached her station during the evening watch with an expression that mixed professional interest with genuine concern about their upcoming mission. "Lieutenant, the crew is hearing rumors about sailing into that typhoon instead of avoiding it. Is there any truth to speculation that we're planning combat operations in Category 5 conditions?" Sarah looked up from her meteorological displays, recognizing that crew morale and confidence would be crucial factors in mission success. "Chief, I can confirm that we're developing tactical approaches that incorporate environmental conditions into operational planning. The specific details remain classified, but the crew should understand that thorough preparation and professional execution will be essential." Thompson studied her weather tracking systems with the attention of someone who had spent decades at sea and understood the deadly serious nature of storm operations. "Lieutenant, I've sailed through hurricanes before, but never anything approaching the intensity you're tracking. What makes you confident that any ship can survive conditions like these?" Sarah activated displays that showed the typhoon's internal structure and explained how understanding storm dynamics could provide navigational advantages that conventional approaches couldn't achieve. "Chief, typhoons aren't uniform weather systems. They contain internal variations and pressure zones that can be exploited by commanders with sufficient environmental intelligence." The Chief Petty Officer listened with growing appreciation for technical sophistication that he had never encountered in standard naval operations. "Lieutenant, how precise are your predictions about navigable corridors through the storm system?" Sarah highlighted specific areas of her atmospheric analysis that showed wind patterns, pressure variations, and temporary zones of reduced turbulence within the typhoon structure. "Chief, my analysis can identify navigational opportunities with accuracy sufficient for tactical operations, provided that course corrections are made in real time based on current atmospheric conditions." Thompson's experience with naval operations allowed him to recognize the extraordinary nature of what Sarah was proposing. "Lieutenant, you're talking about navigation techniques that go far beyond anything taught in seamanship schools. How did you develop capabilities like these?" Sarah's response emphasized technical education and independent research rather than natural talent, maintaining the professional humility that characterized her interactions with senior enlisted personnel. "Chief, I've studied oceanographic and atmospheric applications to naval operations through advanced coursework and continuing education with civilian research institutions." The conversation attracted attention from other crew members who gathered around Sarah's workstation to listen to technical discussions that revealed capabilities they had never suspected among their officers. Seaman Williams, whose youth and inexperience made him eager to learn from anyone willing to teach, asked questions that reflected both curiosity and apprehension about their mission. "Lieutenant, if we're really going to sail through that storm, what should the crew be doing to prepare for conditions we've never experienced?" Williams asked with the earnestness of someone who wanted to perform his duties effectively despite facing unprecedented challenges. Sarah recognized that crew preparation would be just as important as technical navigation for mission success. "Seamen, extreme weather operations require enhanced attention to equipment security, damage control procedures, and coordination protocols. Every crew member will need to perform their duties with precision that exceeds normal operational standards. Petty Officer Rodriguez, whose engineering background helped her understand technical complexity, studied Sarah's atmospheric modeling with professional interest. Lieutenant, your weather analysis equipment looks more sophisticated than anything I've seen in standard naval installations. Are these modifications that you developed yourself? Sarah nodded while explaining technical enhancements that she had implemented to improve storm tracking capabilities beyond standard meteorological systems. I've modified several components to enhance atmospheric data collection and analysis. The improvements allow real-time tracking of storm development with accuracy that consistently exceeds official weather forecasting services. Rodriguez examined the custom modifications with the appreciation of someone who understood engineering challenges and innovative solutions. Lieutenant, these enhancements represent significant technical sophistication. How long did it take you to develop these capabilities? Sarah's response reflected months of dedicated work that had been conducted entirely during off-duty hours without official support or recognition. The modifications were developed gradually over several deployments, incorporating lessons learned from each operational experience. The gathering around her workstation continued growing as word spread throughout the ship that their quiet navigation officer possessed capabilities that went far beyond routine duties. Senior petty officers who had served on multiple ships compared her equipment and analysis methods to standard naval systems, recognizing innovations that exceeded official capabilities. Chief Thompson's final question reflected concerns that every experienced sailor was feeling about their unprecedented mission. Lieutenant, in your professional assessment, what are the most significant risks we'll face during storm transit operations? Sarah opened additional analysis files that contained detailed assessments of hazards associated with typhoon navigation and tactical operations in extreme weather conditions. Chief, the primary risks include structural stress from extreme wave action, potential equipment failures due to atmospheric interference, and navigation challenges created by reduced visibility and electromagnetic disturbances. The technical discussion continued as Sarah explained how each identified risk could be mitigated through proper preparation, enhanced procedures, and real-time adjustment of operations based on current environmental conditions. Her confidence and competence gradually reduced crew anxiety while building trust and capabilities that would be essential for mission survival. Throughout the ship, preparation activities reflected the extraordinary nature of their upcoming operation. Engineering. Personnel secured equipment and systems for conditions that exceeded design specifications. Weapons crews practiced loading and firing procedures that accounted for extreme motion and atmospheric interference. Communication specialists tested backup systems that could maintain contact despite electromagnetic disturbances created by the typhoon. Sarah's role in mission preparation expanded beyond navigation to include briefing department heads on environmental factors that would affect their specific operational areas. Her technical expertise became the foundation for modifications and procedures that transformed the USS Defiance from a standard destroyer into a vessel capable of fighting effectively in the most extreme weather conditions imaginable. The weapons department required detailed briefings on how atmospheric conditions would affect missile guidance systems, radar targeting, and gun accuracy during combat operations conducted in typhoon conditions. Sarah's analysis provided technical data that allowed weapons personnel to develop firing solutions and targeting procedures adapted for extreme weather engagement. Lieutenant, how will atmospheric interference affect our radar and missile guidance systems? Lieutenant Chun asked during the weapons department briefing. His questions reflected professional interest in maintaining combat effectiveness despite environmental challenges that exceeded normal operational parameters. Sarah displayed atmospheric analysis that showed how pressure variations, moisture content, and electromagnetic disturbances would affect different technological systems throughout. The storm. Lieutenant, extreme weather creates predictable interference patterns that can be compensated for through adjusted calibration and modified targeting procedures. The engineering department needed environmental intelligence that would help them maintain ship systems under stresses that far exceeded normal operational requirements. Sarah's oceanographic analysis provided data about wave heights, motion dynamics, and structural loads that would affect everything from propulsion systems to electrical generation. Chief Engineer Martinez studied Sarah's wave analysis with obvious concern about equipment that would be subjected to forces beyond design specifications. Lieutenant, your projections show wave heights exceeding 100 feet. Can our systems maintain operational integrity under those conditions? Sarah's response combined technical honesty about genuine risks with confidence in ship design capabilities and crew competence. Chief, the Arleigh Burke-class is specifically designed for extreme weather operations. With proper preparation and enhanced monitoring, our system should maintain functionality throughout storm transit. The communications department required briefings on electromagnetic interference patterns that would affect radio systems, satellite links, and electronic warfare capabilities during their passage through the typhoon. Sarah's atmospheric analysis provided detailed predictions about signal propagation and interference that would help communications personnel maintain contact despite extreme conditions. Senior Chief Peterson's questions reflected years of experience with naval communications systems and understanding of how weather conditions could affect mission-critical capabilities. Lieutenant, will we be able to maintain contact with Fleet Command during storm transit operations? Sarah highlighted specific aspects of her electromagnetic analysis that showed communication windows and interference patterns throughout different phases of their storm passage. Senior Chief, atmospheric conditions will create intermittent communication opportunities that can be exploited through enhanced procedures and backup systems. The medical department needed preparation for treating injuries and maintaining healthcare capabilities under conditions that would challenge every aspect of shipboard medical operations. Sarah's motion dynamics analysis provided information about ship movement patterns that would affect medical procedures and patient care. Doc, the storm will create motion characteristics that exceed normal seasickness parameters, Sarah explained during the medical briefing. Enhanced preparation for motion-related injuries and modified treatment procedures will be essential for maintaining crew health and effectiveness. The damage control teams required environmental intelligence about structural stresses, flooding risks, and equipment vulnerabilities that would be created by extreme weather conditions. Sarah's engineering analysis provided technical data that helped damage control personnel prepare for emergency scenarios that went beyond standard training. Chief Damage Control Officer Roberts studied Sarah's structural analysis with the attention of someone responsible for ship survival in conditions that could destroy naval vessels through pure environmental forces. Lieutenant, your analysis indicates that we'll experience structural loads approaching design limits. What are the most vulnerable areas? Sarah highlighted specific sections of the ship that would experience maximum stress during storm transit, providing technical information that allowed damage control teams to pre-position equipment and prepare rapid response procedures for potential emergencies. The food service department needed planning guidance for feeding the crew under conditions that would make normal galley operations impossible. Sarah's motion analysis provided information about ship movement patterns that would affect food preparation and meal service throughout their storm passage. Chief, extreme motion will make conventional food service impossible, Sarah explained during the galley briefing. Modified meal procedures and enhanced food security will be necessary to maintain crew nutrition and morale during storm operations. The comprehensive preparation process revealed how Sarah's environmental expertise had become integral to every aspect of mission planning and execution. Her technical knowledge provided the foundation for modifications and procedures that would determine whether their audacious operation achieved success or resulted in disaster. As evening approached and preparation activities continued throughout the ship, crew members who had initially questioned Sarah's place aboard a front line destroyer began recognizing that her specialized capabilities were essential for their survival. The quiet navigation officer who had been dismissed as overly focused on technical details was revealed as someone whose expertise could mean the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. The transformation in crew attitudes reflected growing understanding that their upcoming mission would require capabilities that transcended conventional naval training. Sarah's environmental intelligence had become the key to approaching an impossible tactical situation through methods that no enemy commander would anticipate or prepare for. Throughout the ship, final preparations continued as the USS Defiance prepared to attempt something that had never been tried in naval history. Their success would depend entirely on the technical expertise of an officer whose capabilities had been consistently undervalued until the moment when conventional approaches proved inadequate for the challenges they faced. The hidden training facility Sarah had discovered occupied a forgotten compartment deep within the USS Defiance's hull, originally designed for emergency equipment storage, but abandoned when newer damage control systems made the space redundant. Located 3 decks below the main engineering spaces, the compartment was isolated enough to provide privacy, while remaining accessible through maintenance corridors that few crew members ever used. The steady thrumming of the ship's engines masked any sounds that might escape, creating perfect conditions for activities that required absolute secrecy. Sarah had found the space during her first week aboard the destroyer while conducting a comprehensive survey of the ship's layout that went far beyond standard orientation procedures. Her methodical exploration of every accessible compartment reflected both professional curiosity and personal preparation habits that had been developing since her Naval Academy years. The forgotten storage area measured approximately 20 feet by 30 feet, with overhead clearance sufficient for physical training activities that would have been impossible in standard crew quarters. The compartment's transformation into cabine, a training facility, had occurred gradually over months of careful modification and equipment acquisition. Sarah had requisitioned materials through legitimate channels whenever possible, claiming needs for personal fitness equipment and technical projects that aroused no suspicion from supply personnel. Items that couldn't be obtained officially were fabricated in the ship's machine shops during off-duty hours, when her presence would be attributed to routine maintenance work rather than personal projects. Her training equipment reflected the unique challenges of preparing for naval combat operations in confined spaces. Heavy bags designed for martial arts practice had been mounted using reinforcement brackets that distributed stress across the ship's structural framework. The bags were filled with materials that provided appropriate resistance while generating minimal noise that might attract unwanted attention from crew members in adjacent compartments. Resistance training systems utilized the ship's own structure as anchor points, incorporating cables and adjustable mechanisms that provided comprehensive strength training capabilities without requiring heavy weights that would be difficult to secure and conceal. Sarah had designed the system to accommodate her small stature, while providing resistance levels that could develop functional strength applicable to real combat situations. Agility training equipment included balance platforms, coordination, ladders, and obstacle configurations that could be rapidly assembled and disassembled as needed. The systems were designed to develop speed, precision, and spatial awareness that would be crucial for someone whose combat effectiveness would depend on superior mobility rather than raw physical strength. Combat training focused on techniques specifically adapted for naval environments where engagement ranges would be close, spaces would be confined, and traditional martial arts approaches would be ineffective. Sarah had studied military combat manuals from multiple sources, including Foreign military publications that provided perspectives on fighting techniques not covered in standard American training curricula. Her technical library occupied an entire section of the hidden compartment, containing books, manuals, and printed materials that covered topics ranging from advanced navigation techniques to psychological aspects of combat performance. The collection included texts on oceanography, meteorology, and environmental applications to military operations that went far beyond Naval Academy curriculum requirements. Navigation training materials focused on techniques for operating in extreme weather conditions where standard instruments might fail or provide unreliable information. Sarah had studied historical accounts of naval operations conducted in severe storms, analyzing both successful and failed attempts to maintain navigation accuracy under conditions that challenged conventional seamanship. Physical conditioning programs reflected understanding that combat effectiveness required not just strength and speed, but also endurance and recovery capabilities that could maintain performance over extended periods. Sarah's training regimens incorporated cardiovascular development, flexibility maintenance, and injury prevention techniques that would be essential for surviving combat engagements that might last for hours. Psychological preparation received equal attention to physical development, with training exercises designed to maintain cognitive function under extreme stress conditions. Sarah practiced decision-making scenarios, memorization techniques, and concentration exercises that would help her maintain analytical capabilities during life-threatening situations where clear thinking could determine survival outcomes. Her personal combat philosophy emphasized leveraging intellectual advantages to overcome physical limitations, using superior preparation and technical knowledge to defeat opponents who possessed greater size and strength. This approach required understanding enemy psychology, predicting opponent behavior, and exploiting tactical opportunities that conventional fighters might overlook. Weapons training focused on shipboard systems and improvised implements rather than personal firearms that would be inappropriate for naval combat environments. Sarah had practiced with damage control tools, navigation instruments, and maintenance equipment that could serve dual purposes as defensive weapons when conventional armaments weren't available. Emergency medicine training reflected understanding that combat injuries were likely during any engagement, especially operations conducted under extreme weather conditions where normal medical support might be unavailable. Sarah had completed advanced first aid courses and studied trauma care techniques that could be applied using shipboard medical supplies. Technical skills development included electronics, communications, and computer systems expertise that could provide tactical advantages during combat operations. Sarah's understanding of naval technology exceeded standard officer training, incorporating knowledge of system vulnerabilities and improvised repair techniques that could maintain critical capabilities under battle damage conditions. Her training logs documented months of systematic preparation that addressed every aspect of naval combat, from individual fighting techniques to strategic planning considerations. Each session was recorded with the same precision that characterized her professional work, tracking performance improvements and identifying areas requiring additional development. Physical fitness metrics showed steady improvement in strength, speed, and endurance capabilities despite her naturally small stature. Sarah had learned to maximize her physical potential while accepting that her advantages would come from preparation and technique rather than raw athletic ability. Combat scenario planning included detailed analysis of potential engagement situations that might develop during naval operations. Sarah had studied ship layouts, tactical positions, and environmental factors that could influence combat effectiveness during different types of encounters. Stress management techniques incorporated breathing exercises, meditation practices, and mental conditioning approaches that could maintain emotional stability during life-threatening situations. Sarah understood that psychological preparation was just as important as physical conditioning for someone whose combat role would require clear thinking under extreme pressure. The hidden facility included improvised sleeping arrangements for extended training sessions that lasted through entire off-duty periods. Sarah had learned to maximize training efficiency by conducting marathon preparation sessions that compressed weeks of development into intensive periods of focused activity. Equipment maintenance and security protocols ensured that her training activities remained completely concealed from other crew members. Sarah had developed procedures for rapid equipment concealment and compartment restoration that could be executed within minutes if discovery seemed imminent. Her preparation extended beyond individual combat skills to include understanding of naval tactics, enemy capabilities, and strategic considerations that could affect mission outcomes. Sarah had studied enemy naval doctrines, ship designs, and operational patterns that provided insight into likely opponent behavior during combat engagements. Environmental combat training focused specifically on operations conducted in extreme weather conditions where standard tactics would be ineffective. Sarah had developed techniques for maintaining combat effectiveness despite ship motion, reduced visibility, and atmospheric conditions that challenged conventional fighting methods. Leadership preparation included study of command principles, decision-making processes, and communication techniques that could be crucial if circumstances required her to assume responsibilities beyond her official duties. Sarah understood that combat situations often demanded leadership from unexpected sources. The psychological aspects of her preparation addressed the mental challenges of using violence against human opponents, overcoming natural reluctance to cause harm, and maintaining moral perspective during life-threatening encounters. Sarah had studied combat psychology and ethical considerations that helped her understand the mental preparation required for effective military action. Technical intelligence gathering included understanding of enemy equipment, capabilities, and tactical preferences that could provide advantages during actual engagements. Sarah had compiled detailed information about opposing naval systems and operational doctrines that could help predict enemy behavior during combat situations. Her hidden facility represented months of systematic preparation for combat scenarios that she hoped would never occur, but understood might be inevitable given the nature of naval operations in contested waters. Every aspect of her training reflected understanding that survival and mission success would depend on preparation that went far beyond standard military training. The compartment's location deep within the ship's hull provided not just privacy but also realistic environmental conditions that replicated the claustrophobic, machinery-filled spaces where actual combat might occur. Sarah's training took place in conditions that closely matched the physical environment where her skills might be tested. As her preparation reached completion and their mission departure approached, Sarah conducted final equipment checks and mental preparation exercises that would transition her from training mode to operational readiness. Her months of hidden preparation had transformed her from someone whose value was limited to technical analysis into a warrior whose capabilities spanned every aspect of naval combat operations. The hidden training facility would remain her secret, but the capabilities developed within its confines were about to be tested against challenges that would determine whether her systematic preparation had been adequate for the unprecedented mission that lay ahead. Sarah's transformation from overlooked navigation officer to comprehensive naval combatant was complete, though her colleagues remained unaware of the depth of preparation that had occurred beneath their feet. The Pacific Ocean transformed into a cauldron of fury as Typhoon Helena reached Category 5 intensity, generating winds that screamed across the water at speeds approaching 220 miles per hour. Waves towered like moving mountains, their crests torn away by the howling wind and hurled through the air as horizontal sheets of stinging spray. The USS Defiance rode this oceanic nightmare like a steel needle threading through the eye of destruction, her hull shuddering with each impact as tons of water crashed over her bow. Sarah stood braced against her navigation console in the Combat Information Center, her small frame dwarfed by the massive displays that surrounded her workstation. The ship's violent motion would have made standing impossible for someone without perfect balance and intimate knowledge of how the destroyer moved through extreme seas. While other crew members struggled to maintain their footing, Sarah moved with fluid grace that seemed to anticipate each roll and pitch before it occurred. Her atmospheric analysis had proven devastatingly accurate. The Typhoon's eye wall had developed exactly as her models predicted, creating a 40-mile corridor of relative calm surrounded by walls of wind and rain that would make radar detection virtually impossible. More importantly, her environmental intelligence had successfully predicted where Admiral Kozlov's fleet would seek shelter from the storm's fury. Navigation reports contact bearing 090 degrees, range 12,000 yards, the radar operator announced, his voice tight with concentration as he struggled to maintain sensor contact through the electromagnetic chaos created by the Typhoon. Multiple surface contacts, estimated composition consistent with enemy fleet formation. Captain Hawkins moved to the tactical display with steady steps that defied the ship's extreme motion. Lieutenant Mitchell, confirm our position relative to the storm's eye and enemy fleet location. Sarah's fingers danced across her navigation systems with practiced precision, correlating their current position with real-time atmospheric data and tactical intelligence. Captain, we are currently positioned 14 miles inside the Typhoon's eye wall. Enemy fleet is concentrated in the sheltered waters of Mariana Ridge, exactly as environmental analysis predicted. The tactical situation was developing precisely according to Sarah's environmental intelligence assessments. Admiral Kozlov's forces had been forced to abandon their dispersed formation and concentrate in the only area that provided protection from the Typhoon's devastating winds. Their defensive positioning, optimized for conventional threats, left them vulnerable to attack from directions that no rational naval commander would consider navigable. Weapons reports ready for engagement, Lieutenant Chen announced from the fire control station. All missile systems operational despite atmospheric interference. Targeting solutions locked on enemy flagship. Captain Hawkins studied the tactical display with grim satisfaction as Sarah's predictions materialized into tactical reality. The enemy fleet is positioned exactly where Lieutenant Mitchell's analysis indicated they would be. Admiral Kozlov has no choice but to maintain defensive formation in the lee of the ridge until the storm passes. Commander Davidson approached the captain's position with visible amazement at how environmental intelligence had created tactical opportunities that conventional wisdom deemed impossible. Sir, our approach through the Typhoon has achieved complete surprise. Enemy forces show no indication of detecting our presence. The USS Defiance had accomplished something unprecedented in naval warfare, using a Category 5 Typhoon as tactical concealment to approach an enemy fleet that vastly outnumbered them. Sarah's environmental expertise had transformed the most dangerous storm in decades from an obstacle to be avoided into a strategic advantage that enabled victory against impossible odds. Enemy flagship identified as the battlecruiser Volkov. The radar operator reported range 11,000 yards and closing. Target acquisition confirmed. Sarah monitored atmospheric conditions throughout their approach, providing real-time navigation, guidance that kept the destroyer positioned within the Typhoon's eye while maintaining optimal tactical geometry for weapons engagement. Her understanding of storm dynamics allowed precise maneuvering through conditions that would have destroyed conventional navigation attempts. Captain, atmospheric conditions are optimal for missile engagement, Sarah reported, her voice carrying the quiet confidence of someone whose technical expertise was being validated under the most extreme circumstances imaginable. Wind patterns within the eye wall will not affect weapon accuracy. Captain Hawkins prepared to order the engagement that would determine whether their audacious mission achieved Legendary success, or resulted in their destruction at the hands of an enemy commander who had never tasted defeat. All stations. Report ready for combat operations. The moment of truth arrived as the USS Defiance emerged from the Typhoon's concealment, like a ghost ship materializing from the storm itself. Admiral Kozlov's flagship appeared through the rain and spray, its massive hull presenting a target that seemed too large to miss despite the extreme weather conditions surrounding both vessels. Fire control solutions locked on target, Lieutenant Chen announced. Weapons ready for engagement on your command. Captain Hawkins glanced once more at the tactical display that showed their impossible position, deep within a Category 5. Typhoon, engaging an enemy fleet that had been forced into defensive positioning by environmental conditions that only Sarah had possessed the expertise to predict and exploit. Fire, the captain ordered. Missiles streaked through the Typhoon's fury toward targets that had never expected attack from any direction, let alone from within the eye of the most dangerous storm system in Pacific history. The USS Defiance's weapons found their marks with devastating accuracy, crippling Admiral Kozlov's flagship before the enemy fleet could mount any effective response. The psychological impact was immediate and catastrophic for enemy morale. Admiral Kozlov's forces, already struggling to maintain formation in extreme weather, faced attack from an impossible source by opponents who demonstrated mastery of environmental conditions that exceeded their own understanding. The legendary commander's tactical doctrine crumbled when confronted with capabilities he had never imagined possible. Enemy flagship reports heavy damage and flooding. Communications intercepted from enemy transmissions. Admiral Kozlov's command structure compromised. Enemy fleet attempting to withdraw from engagement area. Sarah continued providing navigation, guidance that kept the USS Defiance positioned for optimal tactical advantage while enemy forces struggled to respond to threats emerging from directions they had considered impassable. Her environmental intelligence enabled continued engagement, despite conditions that should have made naval combat impossible. The battle lasted 4 hours as the destroyer used typhoon conditions to maintain tactical advantage against an enemy fleet that vastly outnumbered them. Sarah's atmospheric expertise allowed the USS Defiance to appear and disappear within the storm like a phantom, striking devastating blows before vanishing back into weather that enemy forces couldn't navigate effectively. When Admiral Kozlov's remaining ships finally limped away from the engagement area, their legendary commander's reputation lay in ruins along with half his fleet. The USS Defiance had achieved one of the most stunning naval victories in military history through environmental tactics that transformed extreme weather from obstacle into weapon. Damage control reports minimal battle damage, Chief Thompson announced with obvious relief and amazement. All major systems operational. Crew casualties limited to minor injuries from extreme weather operations. Captain Hawkins moved to Sarah's navigation station as the typhoon began to diminish and normal weather conditions gradually returned to their operational area. Lieutenant Mitchell, your environmental intelligence made victory possible against odds that conventional tactics couldn't have overcome. Sarah continued monitoring atmospheric conditions with the same methodical attention that had characterized her work throughout their unprecedented mission. Captain, the storm provided tactical opportunities that environmental analysis could identify and exploit through proper preparation and execution. The crew's attitude toward their quiet navigation officer underwent complete transformation as word of their victory spread throughout the ship. Personnel who had dismissed Sarah as someone whose technical focus made her unsuitable for naval combat now recognized that her specialized expertise had been the key to their survival and success. Commander Davidson approached Sarah's workstation with an expression that mixed professional respect with personal apology for months of underestimating her capabilities. Lieutenant, I owe you more than gratitude for what you accomplished today. Your environmental analysis saved this ship and achieved victory that conventional naval tactics couldn't have delivered. Sarah accepted the recognition with characteristic grace while maintaining focus on technical duties that would guide their safe return to friendly waters. Commander, the mission succeeded because environmental intelligence was properly integrated with tactical operations and crew competence. Chief Petty Officer Thompson gathered around her navigation station along with other senior enlisted personnel who wanted to understand how atmospheric expertise had enabled their impossible victory. Lieutenant, how did you know the storm would provide tactical advantages instead of just creating additional hazards? Sarah began explaining environmental principles and oceanographic analysis with the same patience she had always shown when discussing technical subjects with interested crew members. Chief, typhoons create predictable patterns that can be exploited by commanders with sufficient understanding of atmospheric dynamics and tactical applications. The celebration of their victory was tempered by recognition that Sarah's hidden capabilities had been essential for mission success in ways that nobody had anticipated or prepared for. Her months of secret combat training remained unknown to her colleagues, but her environmental expertise had proven decisive in achieving tactical outcomes that conventional naval warfare couldn't have accomplished. Lieutenant Chun joined the group gathering around Sarah's workstation, his previous skepticism replaced by genuine admiration for capabilities he was only beginning to understand. Lieutenant, your weather analysis was more accurate than anything I've seen from official meteorological services. How did you develop this level of expertise? Sarah's response emphasized educational background and systematic study rather than natural talent, maintaining the professional humility that had characterized her interactions throughout their deployment. Lieutenant, environmental analysis requires understanding of atmospheric sciences, oceanography, and tactical applications that can be developed through appropriate study and practical experience. Petty Officer Rodriguez examined Sarah's modified weather tracking equipment with new appreciation for technical innovations that had exceeded official capabilities. Lieutenant, these systems are more sophisticated than standard naval meteorological gear. Did you develop these modifications yourself? Sarah nodded while explaining technical enhancements that had improved storm tracking accuracy beyond standard military systems. The modifications were developed to enhance atmospheric data collection and analysis capabilities for naval applications. As evening approached and the USS Defiance sailed toward home waters, crew members who had spent months dismissing Sarah as someone whose place on a warship was questionable now understood that her specialized expertise represented exactly the kind of unconventional capability that could determine victory in modern naval warfare. The after-action reports would document how environmental intelligence had enabled tactical success against superior enemy forces through approaches that challenged every conventional assumption about naval combat doctrine. Sarah's methods would be studied at naval academies and incorporated into training curricula that recognized environmental expertise as essential military capability. Captain Hawkins addressed the crew over the ship's communication system, acknowledging their collective achievement while specifically recognizing the environmental intelligence that had made victory possible. Today we proved that preparation, expertise, and innovative thinking can overcome any disadvantage when properly applied to tactical challenges. The USS Defiance entered Pearl Harbor 3 days later to a reception that reflected the historical significance of their achievement. Naval officials, intelligence personnel, and tactical analysts gathered to understand how a single destroyer had defeated an enemy fleet through environmental tactics that represented revolutionary approaches to naval warfare. Sarah found herself at the center of debriefings and technical discussions that would influence naval doctrine for decades to come. Her atmospheric analysis methods were classified at the highest levels and incorporated into advanced training programs for officers whose duties required understanding of environmental applications to military operations. The promotion ceremony took place 6 weeks later in a setting That reflected the Navy's recognition of capabilities that transcended traditional military classifications. Sarah's advancement to lieutenant commander acknowledged not just her technical expertise, but her role in developing tactical approaches that had changed fundamental assumptions about naval combat possibilities. Her new assignment to the Naval War College reflected institutional recognition that environmental intelligence represented a specialized capability requiring dedicated study and development. Sarah would train future naval officers in atmospheric analysis and tactical applications that could provide strategic advantages in conflicts where conventional approaches proved inadequate. The hidden training facility aboard the USS Defiance was discovered and converted into an official combat preparation area where crew members could develop capabilities beyond standard military training. Sarah's systematic approach to personal development became a model for comprehensive preparation that addressed both technical and physical requirements for modern naval operations. Years later, when naval historians analyzed the Battle of Typhoon Helena, they would identify it as the moment when environmental intelligence became recognized as essential military capability. Sarah's achievement had proven that technical expertise, properly developed and applied, could accomplish tactical objectives that superior numbers and conventional firepower couldn't achieve. The quiet navigation officer who had been mocked for focusing too intensely on weather analysis had become proof that preparation matters more than perception, that expertise transcends physical limitations, and that the most decisive advantages often come from sources that nobody expects. Sarah Mitchell continued her naval career with the understanding that being underestimated wasn't a disadvantage. It was a tactical weapon that could determine the outcome of any engagement. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.